Hello and welcome to the next episode of the e-commerce practitioners podcast. We've got here Mark Kelly with us, who's had a very interesting journey starting from sports direct to fragrance to travel and now to basically sports breaks, which is quite an amazing journey, almost like full circle. So, Mark, I think it'll be great if you give us a brief introduction about yourself and your journey, and then we get on to the introducing our guests with what the topics we're going to go through and some interesting and exciting conversation topics that we have got.
Would be a pleasure, Vikram. Thank you. Yes. So wow, I think I stopped counting how many years now I've been in the industry. You get to 15 years or whatever, and then you think, yeah, it's not cool to count anymore. But yeah, right from the early days when the e-commerce person was hidden in the corner of a room in between just behind the marketing team doing stuff. Yeah, started off at Sports Direct. I actually joined as a buyer, so I was buying sportswear, and then typical Mr. Ashby style got thrust into e-commerce with a conversation in a Chinese restaurant late one night, which was, website's pretty rubbish, isn't it? Mark, go and sort it out. And that was it. I got a brief to go and get it making 10 million EBITDA, and that was it. Which is really good because I got to start from scratch, and I had to ask all the silly questions. I had to kind of, get into the detail of what is the value. And there still is now, but back then there was a lot of smoke and mirrors because nobody really knew what e-commerce was. But yeah, it was a hell of a 3-4 years, I think I did. It certainly felt like about 10. And so we took rebuilds. I think we did 2 or 3 different platforms because we were just scaling so quick. And I think, from 1 or 2 million a year revenue. And I think when I left, it was probably about 150 million a year. However, I'd love to say that was all, as you would attest, Vikram, my expertise, but I was very much kind of not necessarily moving fast and breaking stuff, just kind of stumbling around and breaking stuff. But the big thing back then, and the early trend was just getting product on site, and so they had vast warehouses of product. And the more you got on the site, no matter how clunky the experience was, the more you sold, really. And obviously you did, Mike did a few things like buy a football club and do all kinds of things, which gave us lots of brand traffic, so we didn't have to invest too much. So, but yeah, it was a hell of a ride. And then moved into a slightly more glossier experience into fashion. So Republic, who were a fashion retailer, heavily into denim, branded as well. And the big trend that changed the landscape for Republic was the shift from branded fashion to non-branded. So that was just the time that Primark was setting up. So where everybody had to pay £150 for a pair of jeans, they suddenly realised they could get pretty similar quality for 20 quid. So that put a lot of pressure on those guys. But at the time we were exploring, what did we have back then? It was mobile. Mobile was just starting.
Yes.
I don't know, was it about, so those years it was probably about 10% of traffic through mobile?
That is correct. Yeah, it was very small portion, really. It was very, very small portion at the time.
I don't know. Can you remember what it was like trying to use phones to do e-commerce?
I don't think anybody used their phones for e-commerce, really. I think that whole game was changed primarily by iPhone when it really became easy.
Do you remember when iPads came in though for a minute? So all of a sudden, like, iPads are the super commerce thing.
Absolutely. Yep. They did not take off the way, phone took the whole industry by storm. I don't think, of course, iPads have their own use case and they use, but they did not really replace the laptops that they were supposed to design to be, or the way they were marketed initially.
Yeah, and I think it tapped into that very wealthy customer who had.
Yes.
How much were they back then? Like 500 quid for an iPad?
Yes, somewhere around that. Yes, exactly.
So all of a sudden everyone thought it was the iPad when really it was just the rich people sat at home just buying whatever they wanted.
It was, the e-commerce was happening primarily on iPads more than the iPhones.
Yeah, definitely. And then, it was at that time the iPhone actually launched, actually. I remember it coming out. And then at the same time, it was very much in the multi-channel, omni-channel. I think multi-channel came first, didn't it? And then everyone, tried to sew it all together in the omni-channel experience. So we did the click and collect, we did real-time stock as well, which was an absolute beast. So I remember when we were doing that at
Yes.
shop as well. Oh, sorry, yeah.
That was
Vikram
That
and
was
I worked
literally
together for a few years.
11, 12 years ago. That was literally 10 years ago almost.
Wow.
Yeah, does not looks like. I mean, I've gotten younger. You've gone gray all over the top. I've gone all blank all the top. But yeah, it's been a great ride.
Yeah.
So Mark, it's very interesting, how you've now almost come to a full circle. You started from sports, went to fashion, went to fragrance, went to travel, and now you're back in sports.
Yeah, it's I do enjoy sports. It's certainly a lot more interesting, selling, negotiating with Manchester United for more ticket allocation for next season. Oh, actually, probably not got anything about how they're playing compared to selling a coach trip from Coventry to Leeds or something like that. So it is very interesting, and I think the shift that happened that really allowed that, because I'm in the managing director role now, so I have full kind of responsibility for the business, was digital is such a big part of any business now. So having that e-commerce background is just the backbone to running a successful business now. Whether it's directly because of the digital marketing or the fulfillment and e-commerce part of it, or just some of the the data and customer driven principles that you have to have. So yeah, it's a good full circle to have, and I'm sure there'll be a few more circles afterwards as well.
I'm sure, I'm sure. What do you think has remained constant across industries, and what do you think has significantly changed through your journey across these multi-industry career?
Yeah, there's loads and loads of changes as they've kind of all picked up and developed. Those changes the only constant, isn't it, to use the old
Yes.
cliche there. But I think the customer has always been the one constant thing, and their expectations have certainly grown of what happens. But if you don't have the customer in the centre of everything you're doing, you will not get that long-term growth that you need. So I think that the customer has been the number one central thing that remains constant.
Perfect. And what do you think has mainly changed, and what kind of mindset, attitude have you seen that helps you succeed in all of these different sectors? And you've had a phenomenal journey from, being a buyer to being the managing director at Sports Breaks. It's not a small feat by any standard. So what do you think has kept you going and climbing these stairs at a rapid pace?
I always say this to the teams and things. It's the number one thing is just getting stuff done. It's making sure that you get it. And the phrase I always use is the net benefit. So, you and I rolled out many developments and platforms when we were working together, but it was always done on the get the value in, get that
Yes.
essential minimal viable product in, get the benefit and the momentum and positivity that comes with that, and keep building on top of it, really, because if you wait for perfection, you'll never ever get it. So yeah, it's a very simple thing of just getting stuff done and being determined with it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, easier said than done. Getting it done is always has its own obstacles.
It's easy for an MD to say, just get it done. Yeah, it's all fine.
I remember, you'd mentioned at one point that at some point you were leading a dev team as well. It was a nightmare to manage. Talk me through that whole experience when you started leading the dev team from getting it done.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So it's quite a large development team that we had. So National Express was the largest one, and it was great that National Express invested in in-house capability. They built it around agile methodology, very product centric. Product owners, product managers in the business, squads, scrum masters to drive it through. But it's about, and you'll know this a lot better than me, Vikram, it's about the blend that you have of the skills, and
Yes.
not just the technical skills, but the experience and the years they have in it. So you have the amazingly talented young developer who's bags and bags of raw talent, but they need that slow and steady developer with them to kind of guide them and keep them moving and keep them organised and manage their emotions as well, because you wouldn't necessarily think that you always think that they sit quietly. They do not. If something happens they do not like, they let you know
Yeah.
about it. So but yeah, I think I class myself as a non-technical person, but knowing when you are being I think I'll drop the first swear word on your podcast, Vikram, but being bullshitted too, knowing when you have that that's the key thing, listening and giving multiple whys, until you get to the real answer of things helps.
No, absolutely. And I like one thing you said, the developers managing their emotions. I want to dig a little bit deeper on that one. I'm sure you've got lots of stories around that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's the same for everyone, isn't it? But if you have things done to you rather than with you, it makes it so, so difficult. And I think developers and technical people are always in that challenging situation where a lot of the decisions are made by people who do not have the technical knowledge. And it's
Yes.
incredibly frustrating for them to be able to sit there and go, why do you want that? That's not going to give you what you want. But then there's a decision made and things like that. So it's a case of realizing and listening to the technical teams of how they're going to develop and implement it, as well as where you want to go and being able to kind of pivot and change from there as well. But as well, it is real life. It's, decisions that you don't necessarily agree with that you might have to go with. And it's about explaining the reasons for those as well. So explaining the non-technical kind of world to the technical people helps them kind of,
Yeah, giving them the holistic vision always helps.
yeah.
I think one thing, I saw this very interesting video a long time ago where there's a business team sitting and there is a developer sitting and they keep telling him, you are the expert, you can do this. What we want 7 lines, which are supposed to be 7 red lines, but you have to draw them in blue color using the blue pen. So he says, how? Why? What? And so it's a very interesting video. I'll share that with you. And they keep saying, but you're the expert. You can, of course, do that. Tell us, how will you do that?
I think I remember this actually. You showed me
Yeah.
this one.
We want 7 red lines, but draw them using a blue pen. So, which is a very interesting concept overall. And that typically is the essence of a lot of conversations that between businesses and the technical people. Have you had some of those scenarios in your area as well?
All of them. And I think now, actually thinking back, there's probably been a few for you and me. And I think you told me that story to explain that I'm asking for nonsense.
Yes.
When we did. And yeah, there's lots of those, but it's always important to start off with what do you think, and involve as many people as early as you can to kind of get the right solution, because with the temperamental developer, they will deliver you what you want, and then they'll just go,
Yep.
"Here you go, it's
Yep.
what you wanted,"
Yeah.
and then that's when it gets a little bit nasty and a little bit fruity sometimes. So yeah, it is about it's just a good practice for life, isn't it? Listening to other people's views of what they want to do.
Absolutely.
It should do.
Absolutely. So I think managing a dev team, you basically require a lot of patience, a listening skills, and ability to handle the temperamental moods and emotions of your dev team from different people.
Yeah, it's not just a process that go through every day. It is writing code, sounding too getting too into it is definitely more of an art, isn't it? It's how they feel and the way they're going to challenge you, tackle a problem and things like that. So you have to approach it in that way.
Yep, absolutely. Now, across these industries, Mark, what is the difference in behavior that you've observed? Let's say beauty and fragrance would typically have a similar customer behavior, but sports retail and the travel sports would probably have some nuances of different customer behavior. What is it that you've seen across these industries in terms of customer behavior?
Yeah, really different. So I'd say the hardest customer to deal with was the retail fashion customer,
Hmm.
because fashion moves so quick and it's so tricky. You have to be so detailed with what it looks like, because it's a purely emotional purchase as well and completely discretionary. They do not need that to exist. Whereas you compare that to when I worked at National Express, the travel part of it is secondary. It's almost forgotten about as the whole thing. It's just literally an A to B kind of
Yep.
scenario, isn't it? Let's say they're going to watch, they're going for a hotel stay in Edinburgh. The actual choice of how they get there is only a very, very small part of it, and they'll be
Yes.
very cost driven, and they just want to get it done. Just get me there. I'm not fussed. All I need is a ticket. Whereas when someone's buying, a bottle of Chanel or an expensive garment of clothing, They want to really experience it, research it, spend times, and and really enjoy it as well. And I think the very different experience. The sports travel area I'm in at the moment has all that, but it also has these real kind of surges of demand. So clubs got to a semi-final. Venues
Yes,
have
of course.
it. Yeah, but it does have elements of everything in there because it's the travel, it's the basics, but also it has that, they're going to really enjoy watching this football game. So they want to see the details, where they sat, what they can do. So yeah, all lots of different ones all come together.
And how have you adapted to and getting them incorporated into their in your digital journeys and in your offerings to the customer? So what are the different approach that you've taken to adapt, the customer journeys according to these different behaviors?
Yeah, I think you always start with a very similar kind of basic framework. Somebody still needs to have that direct path through, to conversion. Fewer clicks as possible. Making it as clear and as easy as possible to do without thinking. But it's about embellishing and adding to the different areas as well, and investing time. Use the data. Where are customers spending time looking at what are the parts that assist conversion, and investing those as well. You'll absolutely be surprised by some of them as well. They'll be very different for each scenario. So yeah, listen to the data. Sorry, look at the data, but also listen to the customer. Get as much customer feedback. There's some brilliant customer feedback tools. Whether it's something as simple as Hotjar, where you can kind of see
Yes,
the
indeed.
behavior, or there's elements where you can get customer panels and you actually get feedback from
Yeah,
those, verbal feedback.
that is interesting. And in terms of upselling and cross-selling, of course, in fashion and beauty and fragrance, it's very thriving element. But would that same concept apply in something like National Express as well at sports breaks?
Yeah, but for different reasons. So in fashion, it was about building and complementing and getting that entire look of what you wanted. Moving now, and this has to be the case for all retailers now, you need to add extra products to add more profit to that customer,
Correct.
because the pricing across every industry is so aggressive now. You can't just
Yes,
rely on buying that one pair of jeans. You need to merchandise it with multiple products, or services or loyalty, elements as well.
absolutely.
So you need to kind of build up that lifetime value, and the purchase value as well. So, it's that very very tight product margin that, from the original purchase, can get wiped out so quickly by transactional costs, paying for their grumpy developers and making sure that they get the right kit and things like that. So having those extra add-ons, it may seem like a small thing, but the extra £5 on here, or £2 on things like that. It builds up and makes digital businesses more able to operate.
No, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. So, do you do what kind of personalization do you actually do in the travel space? Did you manage to implement in the travel space? Did it make sense? Because, like you said, for National Express, people just want to get from A to B. They don't want to be looking for. Of course, you can upsell by renting a car or book a hotel there. But besides that, what other upsell opportunities would exist? And would you invest a lot of time in there, or how would that work? How would you evaluate that?
Yeah, definitely. It's about looking at the wider experience that they have. So, for example, National Express, you obviously got the core reason that they're there with the travel from location to location. But what about things that they're going to do there? How can you complement it? How can you look at the wider journey they're going to have? So, if you're works the same for trains as well, but if you are going from a train station in a city to another city, there's going to be other ends. They might need a taxi the train station, or they might need a bus journey when they get there, or another train journey, a smaller one, or a tram, or something like that. And that's where the technical integration becomes really important as well, because that doesn't become possible unless you have web
Third
services
party.
set up to customize it, because otherwise you're just going to end up handing a customer off to Uber to do something. You don't know what it was. However, if you get the A and B location, you can automatically get the quote for that journey, and even work commercially with that partner to get a discount or an incentive to go, oh yeah, I'll do it all now rather than waiting till later.
Absolutely, that makes never thought of it that way really. Of course, I see a lot of times that there's this taxi available while you're booking a train or bus tickets. To be honest, I've never booked it that way, but I can see that it would be there, why it's there. Now, in terms of bringing these traditional businesses, if I might say, for example, bus and train, National Express, was there any resistance in terms of going heavy on the digital adoption? Because people would always look at it, this is something it's driven by the need and essentialism attached to it, rather than like fashion. It's a whims and fancy thing that you just feel like doing it. So whereas traveling, you just got to do it and you have to buy it. So how was that digital adoption, or was there any resistance? How was that whole piece?
Yeah, it's really interesting how you'll have seen how it's changed over the years as well. And sometimes you will get back in the day, if you had a really strong leader, so which we have both experienced as well, who believed in it, you
Yes.
just move. But there's been so many businesses where, it was almost thought of, not an interest, not it's only going to be a small part of the business. So lots of people didn't see it as the thing it was going to be in the future. And lots of businesses have huge resistance to it as well. I mean, I spoke to someone who worked at Next, the fashion retailer, and he talked about some of the challenges getting them away from the actual catalogue, the printed catalogue.
Wow.
So if I think probably even now you'll still see little elements of catalog culture, in there rather than fully embracing the digital elements. The little clicky page turners that
Yeah.
makes you look like the customers really want that, or is that something more internally? And then National Express was, very much an engineering and buses and coaches based business. But the way that I found really, really useful was to talk to the board about the things that they really, really are interested in. They were all about customer. The customer is the most important thing for them. But also, as is the case with many boards, made up of accountants. So if you can take the data, which you can get from digital commerce so easily, so clearly, and say, here's two logos we had on the website, but when we A/B tested them, this one gave 0.5% conversion increase, which equates to about £500,000 a year for your traffic. They're in,
Exactly.
they get it, and then they see. And I have found that A/B testing and multivariate testing is a really good kind of catalyst to get those conversions, because they can definitely see how it works. If you say to them, that colour, that red button wasn't as high performing as that green button, and by this much, so here's how much profit you've got from making that one decision. They get it and they move with it.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart approach, but a lot of people don't really look at it that way because A/B testing also requires decent amount of effort and work from the teams and understanding what are the parts, because you don't want to overdo it and you don't want to underdo it. Because in both the scenarios, overdoing it will simply just overwhelm you with data and will make your choice even more difficult. Underwhelming, it might just lead you to the wrong decision, right? So, how did you manage to get the right balance, a fine balance for A/B testing?
Yeah, very much. You have to kind of look behind the curtain a little bit on this one, because if you went with the purist approach, you would never get the amount of significance
Exactly.
that you need to make any decision and do it. So you almost need that, year 80-90% there with the decision, and to get it. And as well, you've got to rely on your gut feel. I remember when I was working at the fragrance shop with you, Vikram, we talked to Sanjay about the owner of the business about testing and different things like that. It's like, well, we've employed you as someone with experience that knows the decisions to make. I was like, very good point. That's a very good point. So there is an element of what works, what's best practice.
Exactly.
But sometimes validating those decisions is really important as well. So you might want to crack on and do it, make the changes, improvements that you feel, but you maybe run a 5% test in the background to kind of validate it and go, yeah, I was right, or ooh, actually we need to make some changes there. But the other thing that really, really limits is the amount of data. If you've got a small footfall with a high transactional value, it's very difficult to do, adequate A/B testing as well. So there's lots of challenges, but if you can, definitely use it.
And how would you just, of course, I mean, I understand, but how would you justify the cost for A/B testing? Because you need to deploy people who are doing it on a throughout the day. It's not somebody can do it part time. You can't have somebody just doing it 1 hour a day. You have to constantly monitor it, do it, execute it. How do you do that? Justify the cost of that additional resource.
Yeah, there's some really low cost stuff available out there, highly accurate as well. So it's about getting the momentum and the positive feel about it as well. Certainly don't start yourself off with, a multivariate test that lasts 6 months to get the amount of data to make the significance levels at what they need to be. Start with the easy things, build them up, get the momentum of the business behind it, get the senior management to go, okay, that's a nice little win, nice, simple. Never underestimate those small wins. Even if they're not massively celebrated, they count. They're little bricks to build on and move forward. Start small, move and move as you go. I mean, I've run teams where you have that somebody maybe in the marketing team does a couple of hours a week on it, but I've also had a dedicated team of 4 or 5 people working on it as well, which drives huge amount of value when it's done right.
I was talking to one of the car companies who rent out the car. They had a team of about 80 people dedicated to A/B testing. Every small piece, and they were changing it throughout the cycle of the day itself. Forget about weeks or monthly cycle. They were doing it throughout the day. And it showed significant result, and they justified their cost as well. But it takes time to build that kind of a practice and that kind of a discipline, because it does require significant amount of discipline. Moving on to the next thing is you've switched to sports breaks, which is again a slightly different space altogether. Event driven, extremely high surges. How do you manage that kind of, and of course, seasonality, surges, a lot of loyal fan base, very strong and passionate fan base, customer loyalty. And of course, there's a huge amount of urgency to it as well. So, which creates different kinds of challenges. How have you waded your journey through that?
Yeah, it is very challenging, but I had a very good foundation working in the fragrance and beauty business with, and just sorry to go back to it, but it's the most intense. I think when I started working with you, Vikram, we were maybe June, I think, so maybe mid-year or something like that, and we started working, and we needed this new platform in for Christmas. I was like, I've worked in fashion, and it gets busy at Christmas. But then we saw the curve being like, you would go from tenfold increase in transactions within a few weeks. As soon as you hit that Black Friday kind of period,
Absolutely.
it was insane. So there's a big question there about technically how do you scale up there as well to be able to do it. Never mind the mentality to do it, but I think that kind of growth, that curve is so steep there. That kind of allowed me to be prepared for anything going forward. So moving into sports breaks where you have the new season launch for the Premier League. The Premier League decided to launch all the fixtures at one point on one morning with no prior warning or notice of when the fixtures are. So you have to kind of not just sell the product on that one day, you have to build and refine it as well.
Everything.
So yeah, it's one of those things you see as soon as the launch finishes for that year, as soon as Christmas finishes or whatever, you start planning for the next cycle. You cannot start early enough. So going through, and there'll always be a new technology or a new system that needs to be, by the last minute.
But in your sports events, the cycles are going to be much more frequent. So, for example, beauty and fragrance, the cycle would be, let's say, Black Friday. That's one part of the whole year. But sports events are pretty much happening throughout the day. Today, it's this sport and the other sport. So it's pretty much throughout the year. There is peaks throughout the year, literally.
Yeah, even just this morning. So Good Friday here, and some of my guys have been logging in already to put the new fixtures because of the European football that happened last night on sale this morning. So if you missed that window, the sales have gone. So it's very different. It's a lot different to retailing physical goods because you would buy a product, it would sit on the warehouse shelf, and you just see it, you'd sell through, and you top it up and sell through. We're here, with an event, it's there, it's sold. You've got one opportunity to maximise the profit and revenue from it. You don't know what that's going to sell at. It's going to be a tricky one to sell, or it's going to be easy. So incredibly challenging. You only get one real hit at it.
Absolutely. And from a customer loyalty perspective, of course, everybody has their own personal favorites when it comes to sport teams. But in terms of digital engagement or building that digital loyalty, what are the strategies have you seen that have worked in the sports space to build those from a digital perspective?
All about the lowercase L loyalty. Lots of people get excited about, you'll see lots of decisions made in boardrooms and things where it's like, right, we need to do loyalty. It's like, loyalty isn't something we do, it's an outcome of, of lots of
True.
little things you do. Sometimes, the loyalty schemes do work really well, your Nando's card or your Starbucks and things like that. But they work really well. But it shouldn't be the default. The loyalty is all the little things that you do to make that customer come back. It could be just making it easy to purchase. Amazon, I've not had much love from Amazon. I've used Amazon for years. I don't get any personal phone calls or thank yous or anything like that. But I know it's easy. I know I can just go, so those are really important. Using data for how you communicate to the person as well. So understanding where they are in their life cycle. And, okay, let's use the sports example there. Okay, so somebody went to watch Manchester United versus Newcastle last season. When's that fixture coming up next season? They haven't purchased it yet. Let's maybe, offer it up as a reminder, as an email or something like that, and then follow it up with maybe a call from the sales team to
Yeah.
offer well. So it's all about behaving in ways that do it, rather than having, oh, we've got a card that collects points every time you transact. Why are we losing customers?
Yeah.
That's not the thing. It could be part of it, part of the solution, but it shouldn't be the only thing.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And I think loyalty comes from every small action, right? Like you said, rather than just pasting a big loyalty card on top of your products doesn't really help, right?
Correct, yeah. Fix the
Yeah.
smaller bits behind it.
Absolutely. Now, Sports Break, how was your involvement and what exactly was your involvement in launching the overall tech platform for the business? How has been the growth? What are the lessons that you picked up from that journey?
Yeah, so I joined about a year ago actually this week. So I've just been there a year, but in very similar style. It seems to be a pattern. It's like join the business, and it's like, and by the way, in about 2.5 months, we're going to launch a new platform. Right, okay, let's have a look at it. I think as well, it's about. I certainly have a very specific view of how platforms should work and look. Apologies for that, Vikram, but can you have a really clear view, but it's about understanding what time you've got and what are the ones you can fix and change. If you try and fix everything and change everything at once, it'll never happen. But what you can do is pick one thing, fix it, see the benefits, fix the next thing, and it's just about being disciplined with it, and being patient as well. It's looking at that net benefit of making small changes, getting that value banked rather than waiting for everything to be absolutely perfect. Because I can guarantee you, if you wait for everything to be perfect, everything's changed by then, and it's no longer
Absolutely.
perfect.
Absolutely. I mean, they say that, perfection is the enemy of getting it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in a sense, what you're saying is that being pragmatic is very important when it comes to technology adoption within the business or launching anything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the boring, it's the calm approach. It's doing little
Yeah,
bits at a time as well, but making sure you get the ownership and buy-in from the people who use those particular features and functions as well. You'll get so much more from involving someone in a discussion about how something should be built or developed than you will of get it built and developed and then asking them to fix it. So involving the right people through the process as well is valuable.
of course. And where do you see the huge role of digital marketing coming into play across all of this?
Yeah, it's the rocket boosters on it. So you need the core element there. The worst thing you can do is invest huge amounts of sums in digital marketing if you don't have the products and the
Hmm.
buying experience to do it, because it is digital commerce is traffic times conversion times spend. If you don't have one of those elements, it doesn't
True.
work. You have to
So
have
very
all
true.
of them there working. So it's there to target particular areas. You don't just do digital marketing, you do it with a specific outcome as well. So you might have a particular product that you want to push or a particular customer you want to kind of target. And there's so many amazing ways now to do that through social platforms, through retargeting, through email marketing, through all kinds of different ways to do it. So it's about choosing the right one and investing and looking at that return on investment as well. There's so many companies that, that will have a digital marketing team that are doing PPC, probably spending
Yep.
more than, like
And there should
huge
be.
departments, and because nobody understands it, on
Yeah.
the board or whatever. It's just, it's fine. You go into businesses and you see, it's like, how much have you spent on this and what was the return? It's quite incredible. So spending the time to explain the digital marketing to the key decision makers is really, really important.
And across these diverse sectors, what portion of the business depended heavily on, let's say, SEO or PPC or the overall gamut of digital marketing? I'm sure these contribution would vary depending upon the sector. What has been your experience? That okay, over there it was a huge factor. Over here it is required, but it is not something where we need to put in a lot of money into it. What's been your
Yeah.
experience?
It depends. So, different business I've worked in. So National Express, was a huge brand. The amount of brand traffic that came through free of charge because it's the number one coach solution that people have in
True.
their head.
Absolutely.
And that was, got to the point with Sports Direct as well, because they were such a known brand and
Yes.
negative as well in lots of ways, because some of the things they were doing were crazy. Having that brand awareness of just being the first in mind, I need a football shirt, I'm going to do that. So digital marketing is used to supplement that. And build on it as well and fill gaps where that doesn't exist. But I've worked in businesses where it is strong, and also new businesses as well where you need to build it. I think, and it's interesting when you work with people who really get that as well. So one of my claims to fame is there you go. I've got one here actually. At any particular time, the Sports Direct mug. That was my fault for bringing that in. It wasn't my idea. Mike Ashley, I want a mug, a big mug. I was like, okay, we'll find you one. Go to the kitchen and get one. No, I want to give one to every single person who transacts on Sports Direct. Why on earth? Got this gigantic mug there, but a very, very clever man when you think about it. That he knows that people can't throw mugs away. You can't just get a mug
Yes,
and go, yeah, I've had enough of that, chuck it away. Charity shops don't want them, so
of
you
course.
can't do anything about it. So I can guarantee you those Sports Direct mugs are all over the place,
Yes, they are.
pens in the back of people's cupboards, because, you can't just throw away a bit of pottery and things like that. So you have this brand carrier that kind of delivered so much, and I think they were about 49p to make and ship in the country. And you think about how much digital marketing you could get for 49p. You could probably
Absolutely.
get
Phenomenal.
one click, something like
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
So having
Absolutely.
that kind of thinking to do it. And so, yeah, there's lots of different ways to do it.
And how would you suggest what would be the evaluation matrix as to how much is the right amount of money to spend on digital marketing, depending upon the different sector?
Yeah, it is tricky. You can't just look at the revenue that Google AdWords gives you. You have to look about, how was that customer new? So it does, and I think this is probably one of the most challenging things for businesses to do, to have the right data there and to kind of carve it open, but to understand what you're looking for as well. So one of the first things I do when I join a business is look at how many customers they've brought in within a year or a couple of years, but then how many customers have dropped off. And I can guarantee you the drop off figure, of
Yeah.
customers shocks everyone. You look at it and you realize you brought in, thousands and thousands of customers, but you've lost 90% of them. They're not coming back to you.
Yeah.
And that's a bit. So you have to look at the investment of what it does to the customer of bringing through. But on the day-to-day trading element, you also need to look at the basics of return on investment, ad spend ratio.
Yes. Lifetime value and the repeat order rate as well, which is very critical from a long term business sustainability,
You got
which I think is a hugely undermined factor in most of the businesses' metrics. It is somewhere lying in their sheet, but nobody's really bothered to look at it or monitor it on a regular basis, which is a sad story.
Yeah, you got it. And I think if the finance teams who look at profitability to such a granular level had that knowledge of, look at the customer level, it would change businesses. But no, it's part of the education piece.
Now, in terms of CRO secrets, do you have your own secret sauce, secret black book, like they say, for CRO?
Yes, I do actually have a few. I think, yeah, two I'd say. Countdown timers, insane.
Yeah.
Like really basic, but having a countdown. I can't remember the retailer who did it, but they used to have a countdown timer. I think it was one of these fast fashion retailers, and they had a countdown timer that was 10% off. Only 5 minutes left, and this countdown timer would go. And as soon as it got down to 0, 10% finished, it started up again. So, it was a continual cycle of doing it. I've measured the benefits of a simple countdown timer with not necessarily a discount attached to it. And you're using the double-digit percentage increase on conversion. Big figures on there. So countdowns are amazing. People panic, and they'll make decisions. You have to do it in the right way and make sure that you don't necessarily do it in
It's
there.
not cheesy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing as well, a little secret on the learning that we got was everybody's on that kind of journey of remove the clicks to purchase. It needs to be absolutely easy. You need to be able to buy it straight away. And we did this with the whole buying journey, A/B testing every step, removing this, removing that. Then all of a sudden it got to a point we removed another step. We all patted ourselves on the back, and revenue really dropped off. Like, what we
happened?
done? We're removing clicks to purchase, but what we've done is we've simplified it so much. We've removed the opportunity to upsell and cross sell. It was just so easy, and it goes against everything that we've talked about previously, that they were buying a £25 trip from Coventry to Leeds, let's say, on a coach. And, we were able to upsell them to a different type of ticket, which is flexible, so they can refund it. So they paid another £5 for that.
Yep.
They've added on, a taxi at the end, things like that. But we'd cut out too much to go. They've just bought, £25 done, and you see it's.
And you've lost all of that revenue.
Yeah, exactly. You see airlines doing it really well, and I'm sure they've measured and got it, like whether it's Ryanair or EasyJet, how many steps they put in. It's frustrating for a customer. So it's getting that trade-off between the customer just didn't enjoy that experience, they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
But also allowing them to see the benefit of what they want to do as well.
Absolutely. I think people should be looking at all of these strategies and tactics more from a contextual perspective. From their business, because a lot of times what I've seen is people will just adopt a practice, seeing that this worked for the other business, so it will probably work for us as well, without doing a proper evaluation behind the context and the actual practice if that fits into their business. But a blind following of any specific tactic is just going to lead to failure, I think so, unless until you've done a proper evaluation of the same.
Yeah, definitely. That takes a lot of confidence to do, It takes, so it's about building that confidence within the teams to put their hands up and go, don't think this is the right thing to do, guys. We need to think about different ways. Because sometimes, following the crowd is not going to get you the outcome that you need.
Absolutely. And what, in your opinion, have you seen, Mark, the biggest mistakes that most of the companies do in their overall digital transformation journey?
I think, I will repeat what we said before. It's about waiting for perfection.
Yeah.
It's long gone are the days of that, Web 2.0, which was a change for, there was a whole load of websites that were terrible, and you moved to a new platform and you got this big bounce, and it was amazing because we moved there. And then very quickly that became to, actually, if you re-platform, you have to do it right. You can't just expect, because everything before you was bad. So I think that became a big changing point for it. So it's about improving little things and seeing. Sometimes a re-platforming, you should just replicate what you've got. Usually there's reasons for, for technical reasons that you need to, whether it's tech debt or simplifying or scalability. Sometimes it's good to just have what you've got, move it across this new environment, see the benefits from that, and then start to change on top. Because you could go through, you could change the entire platform. How do you know? If that goes great, why? It could have been even better if you hadn't done this bit. So I would suggest doing lots of little bits and test and learn.
Yeah, that's a very solid advice. One big advice that you've given. Of course, in addition to lots of other things. Where do you think the whole digital commerce landscape is heading in next 5 years? What's going to happen, and where do you see this going?
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? I think,
Especially considering the context of AI and the pace at which the AI is changing the whole game.
yeah, definitely. I think AI will start to really change the service element of it. So you've got the need there. I don't know why it happened, but coming out of COVID, those period of a few years, customers' expectations on service just went insane.
Yeah.
If you do anything wrong to a customer, they've got so many outlets to
Yes. Vent
kind
it
of
out.
vent, and it's quite clever because customers know that they can win, because they can get a refund or they can get something that they're not entitled to by just being very, very vocal about it. And I think where AI will have its use, I mean, lots of uses as well through the piece, but to be able to transform that experience, because the chatbot experience at the moment is pretty poor.
Yep. It is. It is.
You go to a chatbot and you just like connect to agent, connect to agent, connect to agent,
Yeah.
and you just wait for it because they can't do it. And I think what you see now with Gemini and ChatGPT, how clever they are at taking the
Yeah.
nuances and the contextualization of it, that's the bit that will really, really benefit from it. That'll benefit the customer, but it'll also benefit businesses as well because they'll be able to give that level of support in the right way using AI to do it. So, yeah, to answer your question, you can't ignore AI. It's going to be part of it and the whole machine learning element, but it's going to have a good service benefit to it.
And you see a lot of jobs getting impacted with the huge pace of AI development, and especially with this agentic AI coming into play.
No, I'd say there's not many people around that don't have enough to do, because if you could take part of my work, my day, and automate it in the right kind of way, brilliant, because I could do more of something else to do it or more of the things to do it. And I think there's certainly in the areas and industries that we work in, it's only going to be a benefit. So you can do more of the good things you want to do and less of the boring things to do it. It does need a safety element to it though, because you can make some really bad decisions if you're using AI to generate copy to describe a new garment of clothing or something like that. Humans know they can kind of work out what is
Yes.
thoughtfully generated, so it doesn't quite feel the same way on there. And you hear about, I've heard about, is it the government agencies in the UK interviewing and doing the whole recruitment process through AI with zero human interaction. The
Wow.
person will turn up in their first day of office and never been interviewed by someone. And to me, that's almost the worst example of the implementation of AI, because what's more human than
Then an
choosing a
interview.
human?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I read somewhere I don't want AI to be composing music for me or doing art for me. I want AI to be, taking care of my laundry. Because if it's going to take away all my creative stuff, I will be left only to do my laundry and the dirty chores, the daily chores, which I really are boring and I don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah, art is a really good example. So my kids are both into art, and they hate the kind of AI generated art because it takes the whole soul out of it. It takes the feel
Absolutely.
out of it. It's like if you looked at music, highly manufactured music, great, interesting, interesting bit of music, but doesn't have that feeling of some poor kid who was crying his heart out because he got his heart broken and he's written an
Yeah.
album. And that stuff that connects. That stuff connects. So yeah, you have to. Yeah, I like your example. Let it do the laundry.
Yeah, indeed. One last piece, Mark. What would be your advice for aspiring e-commerce and digital leaders looking to build digital transformations, grow their careers? What would be one piece of advice? I mean, of course, you gain lots of small nuggets, but from that perspective,
Yeah, looking to kind of. I think it's about the people around you, building the right teams that you have around you. Certainly with digital leaders, a lot of them have started off like I have, where they had to do it all themselves. So they can do it, certainly not in as much detail, and technologies have changed and things. I know how to run a PPC campaign, I know how to build an email, I know to do all these things. Doesn't mean I should do it.
true.
You need to kind of get the people right people around you who can deliver those things, the right kind of expertise. And it's not necessarily the people who have the most years, it's the people that really kind of feel it and get it and want to do it. Number one thing is surround yourself with the right people so they can do all the work for you, and then you look good anyway.
Yeah. So people with the right attitude don't aim for perfection, gradual improvements, which is somewhat like Kaizen, gradual improvements.
You got it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think those are very, very, and be pragmatic always. Purists, I don't know where they lead to, except losing a lot of money and time.
Completely agree with that one.
Yeah. And one last question, Mark. Where do you think businesses should focus in 2025?
Yeah, I think the focus has got to remain, on the customer. The customer will make the decision at the end of the day. I think if you're doing right by, the right thing by the customer, it's like SEO. You cannot have any shortcuts. Google will find you out. If you try and keyword stuff a page, great, you might get an immediate boost, but you'll get found out. I think it's doing the right thing by the customer so you can see that long term, and looking at the data behind it and the information to support it, and listen to the customer, I'd say. So I think if we remain customer centric, you can get the right balance of, the right experience, the right lifetime value, getting them to come back, or even, that right balance of AI as well. Listening to that customer and how they experience and what they like and don't like, that will set you far wrong.
That is absolutely brilliant, Mark. I really enjoyed our conversation and I hope you did as well. Thank you so much for taking time out, that too on a bank holiday, and doing this with me. Really, really appreciate that, Mark. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Mark Kelly with me, Managing Director of Sports Breaks. I had a wonderful chat with him. I'm sure you all will enjoy this episode as much we enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully see you soon in the next episode as well. Thank you so much, Mark.
Very well.